if you look at this example here, okay, if you want to calculate range, the formula for range is says difference between maximum and minimum value. So here the maximum value is 50 and the minimum value is 30. The range here is 20. Okay, so you can see you can use a group B and group C examples also to calculate the range. However, the range is not a good measure of spread because it only focuses on the two extreme observation. It doesn't give a good picture to the overall spread of the observation. The second measure of spread is known as standard deviation. Standard deviation is the average distance of all the data points from the mean. Okay, so let's do an example here. So we have the data already here. So if you want to calculate the standard deviation for this data, standard deviation is the average distance from mean. So if for this example the mean is 85, and you can see these values, how these values are far from 85. So this value is a little far, this value is very far from 85, this value is a little bit near. You see this value is very far, this value is very far from 85. So you see there's a lot of variation from the given data set. So which means that there is an opportunity to improve the variance. So let's calculate what is the standard deviation for this given data set. It's very simple. You go to Excel, use the formula STDEV. Okay, let's try it again. Just select STDEV and I'll select the entire range. I click enter. So 42.5237 is the standard deviation here. Okay, the higher the standard deviation is, we would say there's more variation in the process. The lesser the standard deviation is, there is a very less variation. Okay, so we should always aim for a less standard deviation. So these are certain examples. I would request you to try this and you'll be able to calculate standard deviation on your own. Okay, let's move ahead. Now we are going to talk about the next measure of spread, which is called quartile. Quartile is something where data can be divided into 4 different parts or 4 different regions that cover the entire range of the observed values. If you cut point for these regions are also known as quartiles. Quartile comes from quart. So Q1 is the 1/4 item, Q2 is the 2/4 item, okay, which is also known as median. Q3 is the 3/4 item, and Q4 is the last item. Okay, so calculating quartile is very simple. So we will take this example to calculate quartiles. Okay, so let's say we have the same example. If I want to calculate quartile, I can use it. It's very simple. So I can use the formula quartile here. Okay, I am selecting the entire range. Since I want to calculate Q1 here, which is quartile 1, I'll use comma 1, which is first quartile here. Okay, and I close the bracket. So my quartile 1 is 41 here. Okay, if I want to do quartile 2, so I will quartile, I will use the data and use here 2. So 92.5. So this is my Q1. This is my Q2, and I want to calculate Q3 here. It's very simple. I'm just using this formula and changing it to 3 here. To 3 here. So 103.5 is my Q3, and if I want to do Q4 here, so 174 is my Q4. Okay, so we have, this is my distribution as per the different quarters that I have. Okay, So Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. So in a given data set, we say that 50% of my data points are is between the minimum value and Q1, which is the minimum value here is 36. So 36 to 41 is the 25%. 41 to 92.5 is the Q2, which is 50%. 92.5 to 103.5 is my 75%. And 103 to 174 is my 100%. Okay, so these are my Q1. So 25% here and this 25%. So this is how the quartiles are being calculated. Okay, moving on. Okay, so we have covered the basic stats now. We have covered mean, median, mode, standard deviation, range, and quartiles. Now we are stepping into the 5-step methodology, which is also known as a process improvement methodology. This 5-step methodology starts from the define phase, then move on to the measure phase, analyze, improve, and control. Okay, so this is something which needs to be followed in terms of the 5-step methodology. We will be discussing this in detail in the upcoming sessions. Okay, let's take that analogy to understand something very interesting that is coming up. So let's take this example. A man wants to reach his workplace by 6:55 a.m. but he's unable to do so exactly at 6:55 a.m. every day. Sometimes he reaches earlier, but almost never before 6:50. Sometimes he reaches later, but almost never after 7 a.m. So he's reaching office between 6:50 to 7. Okay, but his office time is 6:55. So he's sometimes 5 minutes late, 5 minutes early, but he's never reached beyond 7, and he never reached before 6:50. Okay, this is because of a certain factors which affects the time he takes. He cannot control. It is very random. He cannot reach to office accurately at 6:55 every day. Because the traffic he encounters under normal course of travel, the variation that occurs due to these kind of factors is also called inherent variation or common cause variation. Reaching office 5 minutes here and there is a common cause variation because there are certain factors which cannot be controlled, which would come for sure. And that's why it is called the common cause variation, because it's an inherent variability. Okay, so it should be, the aimed value should be between the maximum deviation and the minimum deviation, which is quite accepted. Let's take another example. Today he's reached early. He's reached at 6:30, probably because his watch was running fast, because he got a ride. His bus driver took a shortcut. He stayed over at a friend's nearby. He had some important work to be finished before 7:30. Okay, these causes are characteristic of a specific circumstances and do not occur in the normal scheme of actions. Okay, variation due to these type of reason is called assignable or special causes. Today he's late again. Why? He reaches office at 7:20 because he overslept. He missed the bus driver was new and took some other route. He stayed over at friends far away. These causes are characteristic of a specific circumstance that do not occur in the normal scheme of action. Again, variation due to these type of reason is called assignable or special cause variation. So the entire analogy was shown you to make you understand that there are two types of variation when we are doing Six Sigma implementation or when we're doing Six Sigma projects. One is called the common cause and another is called the special cause. Common cause of variation, it always present. It is expected normally. There are a lot of causes, each with very little effect. It is difficult to identify and little difficult to eliminate. However, if it's a special cause, it is not always present. It's an unexpected. It is not normal. There are very few causes which leads to special causes, very few with large effect. It is very easy to identify and very easy to implement. Okay. Now we're going to talk about different ways to commence a project. Okay. First is called VOC, which is voice of customer. On this particular slide, we're going to talk about what are the different ways or different trigger points which lead us to commence a project. The first one is a customer complaints under VOC, and the second is customer escalation. All these all these trigger comes from VOC. Second way to commence a project is called voice of business. Okay, voice of business is also called as VOB. The first is attrition, absenteeism, cycle time reduction, repeated errors. All these are voice of business, voice of stakeholder, voice of CEO, voice of CFO, because they really want to improve these business metrics. It is not something which has come from the customer, it has come from the business. The third way to commence a project is using COPQ, which is known as cost of poor quality, which means that there are a lot of reworks happen, and to do that rework, the employees have to work again. And if they have to work again, they have to put in a lot of time, and the time is equal to money. Okay, so that's a cost which is being incurred extra. For that, we can do projects on improving, achieving the right first time to improve the poor accuracy. Then there's another way to commence a project which is known as RTY, which is ruled throughput yield. Ruled throughput yield is when one process acts as input for another process. Okay, when there are 3, 4 different departments which are interrelated to each other, when output of one becomes the input of another, and so on and so forth. And in that case, if there is a process wherein the ruled throughput yield is very low, wherein the final product which is given to the customer has some issues, in that particular case, we would try to improve the ruled throughput. And last but not the least, which is first time right, which is to improve the output of just one process instead of concentrating at a series of processes. So, which focuses on that if I work on this one particular process, my entire value chain will. So that's how, with these are the trigger points which help us to commence a Six Sigma project. That's why it says time to start now. Now we get into the define phase of Six Sigma.